For my story, Cancer is Metaphor, please welcome Ibram X. Kendi, author of How to Be an Anti-Racist and the director of the Anti-Racist Research and Policy Center at American University.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ibram Kendi, and it would be easy for me to stand up before you and talk about the fact that African Americans are still more likely to die from most cancers. It'd be easy for me to talk to you about the ongoing debate about why these disparities exist. Is it because there's something wrong with African Americans, either biologically or even behaviorally? Or is there a problem with our policies and our environment and our society? But I'd actually come here to talk to you about that. I came to talk to you about my own story with cancer, and in the way in which, through cancer, I was able to sort of see it as a metaphor for understanding something else. Early part of 2018, in January, I was pretty much ordered by my wife to go and get a colonoscopy. For several months, I had been going to the bathroom and only to not go. For several weeks, when I would go, was basically putting up blood clots. And so she, being a pediatric emergency doctor who was a breast cancer survivor herself, pretty much told me when we got back from vacation that we took during the New Year's weekend, that I was going to the doctor. But she didn't actually think that it was anything serious. And when I initially went to the nurse who ended up scheduling the colonoscopy, she didn't think there was anything serious. I was 35 years old. I had no risk factors. I didn't smoke. I didn't drink. I was a vegan. I worked out. But ultimately, I was diagnosed with colon cancer on January 10th, 2018. And then the very next day, I learned that I had stage 4 colon cancer. And what was ironic about that week when I was diagnosed is I had already been sort of working on an essay about racism, on an essay arguing that the heartbeat of racism is denial, and that throughout history, those who have produced racist ideas, those who've supported racist policies, had customarily defined themselves and their ideas and policies as not racist, that denial was essential to racism itself, that it was so hard for people to admit the ways in which they're being racist. And what was ironic is I was working on that essay in many ways because it took me quite a bit of time to admit that I actually had cancer with no risk factors at 35 years old. I did not want to believe it. I did not want to believe that it was so bad. And what's ironic is when it comes to identifying an American as racist, we have so many Americans who will say, no, let's not use that term. Let's not identify them in that way. That will hurt them. They don't need to know it's that bad. It will shut down conversation. But when it comes to identifying and diagnosing someone with cancer, we recognize the importance of telling someone exactly what they have, exactly what their treatment options are. Why? Because we realize that if we do not, they could die. So in other words, by hurting them, we recognize the ways in which we're providing a path to healing them. But when it comes to racism, we somehow want to heal this country and even heal ourselves of racism without pain that is essential to healing. And so I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. It took me a while to, as I state, admit that I had it. I didn't want to believe it. I did not want to believe someone like me could have cancer in the way so many Americans want to believe that someone like them can't be racist. And so ultimately, I, of course, was allotted a treatment plan. And what's ironic about the way we treat cancer is we actually could treat metastatic racism in the same way. Because we too, in this country, have metastatic racism. And these tumor cells have literally spread to every part of the body politic. And what I mean by tumor cells is I'm talking about the tumor cells of racial inequity. Because for me, when I see racial inequity, I see racism. When other people see racial inequity, they see what's wrong with a particular racial group, which to me means I'm also seeing racism. And so the way in which we treat racism is actually, I should say, the way we treat cancer is the way we can go about treating racism. In other words, we can have a local treatment in which we go in and surgically remove our nation's racist policies. How do we know those policies are racist? Because they're creating racial inequity, because they're not leading to racial equity. We can go in and surgically remove those racist policies. In the way doctors went in August of 2018, 2 different surgeons to surgically remove my tumors. But they didn't stop there. That's not the only treatment that I received. They wanted to make sure that they shrunk those tumors. They wanted to make sure that those tumors did not return. So they flooded my body with chemotherapy for 6 months, which is equivalent to flooding the body with anti-racist policies. And at the end of the day, I had to believe that despite people with my illness being 88% of them die in 5 years, I had to believe that I could overcome cancer in the way that we, as a nation, have to believe we can overcome racism. Thank you.